I've lived in this little yellow house for over 40 years. The paint has faded, the porch creaks, and the rose bush my late husband planted leans toward the sun like it's searching for him. Every corner carries his memory, his laughter echoing through the hall, the smell of his cologne in the wardrobe I never emptied. Life had slowed down, but it was peaceful. My mornings began with a cup of tea by the window and ended with the soft hum of the old radio that kept me company. I didn't need much, just a few groceries, my garden, and my car. That silver sedan wasn't just metal and wheels. It was freedom. It was the last thing my husband bought for me before he passed. "So you'll never have to depend on anyone," he'd said, handing me the keys with that proud smile. He was right. For years, that car was my independence. I drove to the market, to the church, to visit my friends. Even at 72, I still loved the road. The feeling of control, the breeze through the window, the music playing softly as I sang along to songs from my youth. But lately, things had changed. After my husband's death, my son insisted I move in with him and his wife, Maria. "It's safer, Mom," he said. "We'll take care of you." At first, I resisted. I didn't want to be a burden, but loneliness has a way of softening even the strongest heart. So I agreed. I sold the farmhouse, packed the memories into boxes, and moved into their modern suburban house. Cold walls, glass furniture, and silence that didn't feel like home. Maria was polite in the beginning. She smiled, brought me tea, and called me Mom. I thought maybe we'd become close. But it didn't take long for the cracks to show. The warmth faded, replaced by short answers, heavy sighs, and closed doors. I noticed small things first. My favorite chair disappeared from the living room. My family photos were replaced by hers. My cooking wasn't healthy enough. My presence, it seemed, wasn't convenient anymore. Still, I stayed quiet. I kept to my corner, spent my days tending to the small plants on the balcony, and tried not to get in the way. My son was always busy with work, and I didn't want to cause tension, but I saw the looks Maria gave me when he wasn't around. The way her smile tightened, the way she whispered on the phone, I ignored it. For peace, for my son. One chilly morning in October, I woke early to make tea. Maria was already in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone. She didn't look up when I greeted her. The air was heavy with the scent of something burning. Toast forgotten in the toaster. "Good morning," I said softly. "Morning," she replied flatly, not meeting my eyes. After a long pause, she sighed. "By the way, I spoke to David about your car. You barely use it anymore. We're thinking of selling it." My hands froze around the teacup. The world seemed to still. "My car?" I asked. "Yes," she said casually, still tapping her phone. "You don't drive much. It just takes up space in the garage." I set the cup down carefully, afraid my trembling fingers would shatter it. "That car is mine, Maria, and I do use it." She looked up then, her eyes sharp. "Do you? You haven't driven in weeks. Besides, at your age, it's not safe." Something cold spread through me, a mix of anger and disbelief. "It's not your decision." She gave a small, dismissive laugh. "I'm just thinking of what's best for everyone. We could use the extra money for the house. You don't need it." She turned and walked out, leaving me standing there with my heart pounding so loud I could hear it echo off the kitchen tiles. For a long time, I couldn't move. I felt the sting of humiliation. The car wasn't just transportation. It was a piece of my past, my husband's last gift. To sell it was to erase him. That day, something inside me changed. I had endured her disrespect quietly, convincing myself it was better to avoid conflict. But this was different. This was theft, wrapped in kindness. When Maria left for her yoga class, I walked into the garage. My silver sedan sat there, covered in a thin layer of dust, just as she said, but when I touched it, it still felt warm to me. I opened the door, sat in the driver's seat, and let the smell of old leather and nostalgia fill me. I ran my fingers over the steering wheel. "Don't worry," I whispered. "She won't take you from me." I didn't know how yet, but I promised myself I would stop her, quietly, smartly, the same way she had been taking everything from me, one piece at a time, without raising her voice. That night I didn't sleep. I listened to the sound of rain tapping against the window, and in that rhythm, I began to form a plan. Maria thought I was old and helpless. She had no idea what I still had left. The next few days were quiet, too quiet. Maria avoided me, which was fine. I preferred silence over her artificial politeness. But when silence lingers too long, it begins to whisper secrets. I noticed her spending more time on her phone, taking pictures of something in the garage, then lowering her voice whenever I passed by. Once, I caught a glimpse of her screen. A listing page, the kind people use to sell cars. My car, I didn't say anything, not yet. Sometimes silence is a sharper weapon than words. That evening, as we sat for dinner, my son David was cheerful, completely unaware of the storm brewing beneath his roof. Maria's been busy organizing things, he said proudly. She's so good with finances. Maria smiled sweetly, looking straight at me. Yes, I'm just trying to make sure we use our resources wisely. I held my fork tightly. Resources. That's what she called my memories now. My husband's gift. My independence. David turned to me. Mom, you okay? You haven't been using the car much, right? I looked at him, my heart aching. He meant well. He didn't see the manipulation behind her soft voice. I still use it when I need to, I said gently. Maria's smile didn't falter. Oh, she doesn't need to drive, honey. I can take her anywhere she wants. Her tone was sweet, but her eyes were cold steel. That night, I went to my room and closed the door. I took out the old box I'd kept hidden under the bed. Inside were old photographs, a few letters from my husband, and a small leather envelope with documents. Car papers, insurance, ownership, all still in my name. I smiled faintly. You can try, Maria, I whispered. But you'll need more than charm to steal what's mine. The next morning, she struck. I woke up to the sound of footsteps in the garage. Curious, I peeked out the window. A man stood there with a clipboard inspecting my car. Maria was beside him, smiling politely, gesturing as if she owned it. My chest tightened. She'd already found a buyer. I walked out, my cane tapping the tiled floor. When she saw me, her smile froze for a second. Oh, Mom, this is Mr. Allen. He's here to look at the car. I stared at the man. This car isn't for sale. Maria stepped forward quickly. Actually, it is. We've talked about it, remember? It's not safe for you anymore. We're upgrading to something better. Her voice was sugar-coated poison. I looked straight at the buyer. This vehicle is registered under my name. Nobody sells my car without my permission. Mr. Allen looked confused, glancing between us. Ma'am, maybe I should come back later. You should, I said firmly. Maria's expression darkened. Mom, please don't make a scene. You're being unreasonable. Unreasonable? I stepped closer, my voice steady. You're selling something that doesn't belong to you. I may be old, but I'm not senile. David came running in, alarmed by the noise. What's going on? Maria quickly turned on her act. Your mom's upset again. I was just trying to help. Help! I cut her off. By lying? By taking things that aren't yours. The air in the garage felt heavy. David looked torn, his eyes darting between us. He trusted his wife, but he also knew me, or so I thought. Mom, please, calm down, he said finally. We can talk about this later. I took a deep breath, forcing the anger down. Fine, I said quietly. We'll talk later. I turned and walked back to my room. Behind me, I could hear Maria's frustrated whisper. She's being impossible. We'll sell it anyway. She won't even notice. That night, I sat by my window again, the old radio humming softly. My heart ached, but my mind was sharper than ever. She thought she'd win by outsmarting me, but she didn't know. I'd lived through harder times. I'd survived wars, losses, and betrayal far greater than this. If she wanted to play games, I'd give her one she'd never forget. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. The house was quiet, everyone asleep. I went to the garage, ran my hand across the car, and whispered, "It's time." I slid into the driver's seat and turned the key. The familiar sound of the engine comforted me. I hadn't driven in weeks, but it felt natural, like breathing. I drove out silently into the misty morning, heading to a place Maria didn't even know existed, my old friend Samuel's workshop. Samuel was an old mechanic and my husband's best friend. He still remembered me as the woman who could fix a tire faster than any man. When he saw me pull up, his eyes widened. "Eleanor, you still drive that beauty?" I smiled. "Barely. But I need your help." He listened as I told him everything. About Maria, about the sale, about the humiliation. He nodded, his expression hardening. "That's low. What do you want me to do?" I handed him the car papers. "Keep it safe for me. Don't tell anyone it's here. I'll handle the rest." He hesitated. "You sure about this?" I nodded. "I've lost enough already. Not this time." When I got back home, Maria was waiting at the door, her expression sharp. "Where have you been?" "Out," I said simply. "With my car?" She snapped. I looked her in the eye. "No, with my husband's gift." Her face flushed with anger. "You can't just—" "I can," I said calmly. And I did. For the first time, she had no words. That night, I sat in my room, feeling something I hadn't in a long time. Power. Quiet, steady power. She thought I was weak. But I had just started. Maria didn't know it yet, but she had crossed a line she'd never be able to come back from. And I was done being the silent old woman in the corner. The next few days, Maria was quieter than usual, but not peaceful quiet. No, hers was the kind of silence that vibrated with fury. She avoided me, yet I could feel her watching, listening, waiting for me to slip. I didn't. I went about my days as if nothing had happened. I watered my plants, brewed my tea, hummed old songs under my breath, and smiled every time I thought of my car resting safely at Samuel's workshop. Maria didn't know it, but I had turned the game around. Still, something didn't sit right. Her desperation to sell the car wasn't about money, at least not just that. There was a kind of urgency in her eyes that I couldn't forget, and whenever the phone rang and she hurried into another room, my instincts whispered, "There's something more." One afternoon, while she was out shopping, I heard her phone buzz on the counter. Normally, I respected privacy, but she'd crossed that line long ago. The message on her screen made my blood run cold. It read, "Once the sale's done, send me the papers. We can finalize the payment. Don't let your mother-in-law interfere." The sender's name, Liam. 4:00 p.m. appointment. I frowned. Payment? Papers? And who was Liam? Something inside me hardened. I knew then, this wasn't just about selling a car. She was hiding something big. I quickly jotted down the number and deleted the message before she came back. That evening, I called Samuel from my room. "Can you do me a favor?" I asked quietly. "Of course, Eleanor." "What is it?" "I need you to find out if anyone's been asking about my car." "A man named Liam." He was silent for a moment. "I'll ask around." "What's going on?" "I'm not sure yet," I said. "But I will be soon." The next morning, I watched Maria as she left for her so-called yoga class. She was dressed too nicely for yoga, heels, makeup, hair perfectly done. I waited 10 minutes, then slipped on my shawl and quietly followed. I didn't drive this time. I took a cab. The driver dropped me a few blocks away from the address I'd tracked from her phone's calendar reminder. It was a small car dealership on the edge of town. Through the glass, I saw her, standing beside a tall man in a navy suit, Liam, I assumed. They were looking at documents, and she was smiling, the same fake smile she wore at home. I moved closer, hiding behind a row of parked cars. My heart raced, but I forced myself to stay calm. Liam handed her a pen. She signed something, papers. My papers, then I saw it. On the desk beside them was a familiar blue folder, the one I'd kept in my drawer for years. Car documents, registration, insurance, everything. My stomach dropped. She'd been in my room. She'd gone through my things, stolen the papers, and now she was trying to sell the car illegally. I wanted to burst through those doors and scream, but I stopped myself. Anger wouldn't win this war. Intelligence would. I pulled out my phone, took pictures through the window, her signing, the documents, the man's face, the dealership logo. Evidence. Then I quietly turned and walked away. By the time I reached home, I was trembling, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of betrayal. That night, when Maria returned, she was glowing. "Good day?" I asked softly. "Lovely," she said, not meeting my eyes. I smiled. "I'm glad." She looked surprised, maybe even suspicious. But I simply returned to my tea, pretending nothing was wrong. The next morning, Samuel called. "Eleanor." "You were right. What did you find?" I asked. "That Liam guy, he's not a dealer. He works for a private collector. Word is, he's been paying cash for vintage models, especially ones tied to special histories." I frowned. "Vintage models?" He chuckled softly. "You never realized, did you? That car of yours, the one your husband bought, it's a rare limited edition. Only 20 made that year, and yours is one of the last still in perfect condition. It's worth a fortune." My heart skipped a beat. My husband had never told me that. He'd just said it was reliable, good quality, nothing about it being valuable. Maria must have found out somehow, maybe through the paperwork. That's why she was so desperate. She didn't just want to sell my car. She wanted to steal my inheritance. For a moment, my knees went weak. I sat down, gripping the armrest of my chair. I wasn't angry anymore. I was something else. Calm, cold, focused. "Thank you, Samuel," I said. "Keep the car safe. Don't let anyone near it. I'll handle the rest." When I hung up, I looked out the window. Maria was in the garden, pretending to trim flowers, humming a tune. She had no idea I knew. That night, I began to write. I opened my husband's old typewriter and typed a letter, formal, sharp, and precise. It was a legal notice addressed to my lawyer, Mr. Haynes. I wrote down every detail: the car's theft attempt, the false sale, the name of the buyer, and the photographs I'd taken. Then, in another envelope, I placed copies of the documents and pictures. I labeled it, "In case anything happens." I tucked it inside my closet, under my folded clothes. I wasn't afraid, but I was prepared. The next morning, Maria tried to act normal again. "Mom, want to go for a walk later?" I smiled. "Of course, dear." "I'd love to." She seemed relieved, maybe thinking I'd given up, but she didn't see the calm storm behind my smile. I had her name, her plan, her lies, all ready to expose. She thought she'd won. She had no idea she'd just handed me the weapon that would destroy her, her own greed. The next move would be mine. The day I decided to fight back, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I didn't even show anger. Sometimes silence speaks louder than any scream. Maria mistook my quiet for surrender. That was her first mistake. Over breakfast, she chatted about redecorating the house, pretending as though nothing had happened. "We should get new furniture, maybe even redo the kitchen," she said, flipping through a glossy magazine. I nodded politely, stirring my tea. That sounds nice. Inside, my thoughts were miles away, already setting the stage for what was to come. I started by making small, deliberate changes. First, I began going out every morning again, sometimes to the church, sometimes to the market, and sometimes to the lawyer's office. I didn't tell Maria where I was going. She didn't ask. She thought I was wasting time, keeping myself busy. But each trip brought me closer to securing my plan. Mr. Haynes, my late husband's old lawyer, listened patiently as I explained everything. The false sale, the stolen documents, the potential fraud. When I showed him the photos, he raised his eyebrows. "She's in serious trouble if we press charges," he said. "I don't want her in jail," I replied quietly. "I want her to learn, to understand what she's done." He nodded slowly. "Then we'll do this smartly." He helped me draft a few letters, official ones, addressed to the dealership, the supposed buyer, and one copy to the family home. Each stated clearly that the vehicle was under my sole ownership and that any sale attempt, without my written consent, was fraudulent and punishable by law. He also arranged for the car's registration to be temporarily locked under my estate protection clause, meaning no transfer could legally happen without my signature or my lawyer's presence. In short, Maria's game was over before she even realized it. But I wasn't done. I wanted her to see the consequences of greed, not just in paperwork, but in life. That evening, I baked her favorite cinnamon rolls. The smell filled the kitchen, warm and comforting. When she came in, surprised, I smiled sweetly. "Peace offering," I said. She looked almost guilty, but greed makes people good at hiding guilt. "Thank you, Mom," she said, taking one. "They smell amazing." We sat in silence for a while, sipping tea. Then I asked as casually as I could, "Did you ever end up selling that car?" Her hand froze midair. "What?" "The one you wanted to sell?" "The buyer, Liam, was it?" I tilted my head, pretending to search my memory. She laughed nervously. "Oh, that was nothing. Just some guy who offered too little." I dropped the idea. "Good," I said softly, "because it would have been a mistake." Her eyes flickered. "Why do you say that?" I looked up, meeting her gaze. "Because I found out that car is worth a fortune. A collector's piece. If anyone had tried to sell it cheap, they'd have cheated themselves." Her face drained of color. What do you mean?" "Oh, nothing important," I said with a small smile. "Just something my lawyer mentioned. He's handling all the estate documents now." She blinked rapidly. "Estate documents?" "Yes," I said calmly, taking another sip of tea. "You never know when you'll need to protect your assets. I wouldn't want anyone to misuse something so valuable." I watched her carefully as she swallowed hard. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her cup. That was the moment she realized. I knew, but I still didn't confront her. Not directly, not yet. I wanted her to drown in her own fear first. Over the next few days, I made sure the silence in the house became unbearable. I didn't accuse, didn't argue. I just smiled and spoke softly. The more peaceful I was, the more restless she became. One night, I heard her whispering urgently on the phone. "No, she's found out something. I don't know how, just wait. I'll handle it." I stood by my door listening. She was panicking. The next morning she came to me, voice trembling slightly. "Mom, I think there's been a misunderstanding about the car." I looked at her with practiced innocence. "Oh?" "I never meant to sell it without your consent," she said quickly. "It was just, I thought it'd be better to upgrade. Safer." "Of course," I replied gently. "But you already signed papers, didn't you?" Her mouth fell open. I smiled. "Don't worry. I made sure those signatures were invalid. You see, Mr. Haynes already contacted the collector. The police have a copy of the documents, so no one will lose anything, except perhaps their peace of mind." Her face went pale. "Police?" "Routine procedure," I said lightly. "Fraud investigation, they called it." She stumbled back a step. "Mom, please, I didn't mean to." I leaned forward slightly, my tone still calm but cutting through the air like glass. "You went through my things. You lied to your husband. You tried to steal the last piece of your father-in-law's memory from me. Tell me, Maria, what exactly did you mean to do?" Tears filled her eyes, but I didn't feel pity. "Not yet. David doesn't know, does he?" I asked softly. She shook her head, ashamed. "Then let's keep it that way," I said. "For now." Her eyes widened. "What do you want?" I stood up slowly. "Nothing. I already have what I need, the truth, but I want you to live with it. To wake up every morning and remember the line you crossed. And when the guilt finally eats away at you, maybe then, you'll understand what it means to lose trust." She stood frozen, tears silently streaming down her face. I turned and walked away, my cane tapping rhythmically against the floor. With each step, I felt lighter, stronger. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in months. In the morning, I found Maria sitting at the table, eyes red from crying. She didn't look up as I poured my tea. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know," I said quietly, "but some things can't be undone." I didn't need revenge through shouting or punishment. My victory was quieter, seeing her break under the weight of her own conscience. But what I didn't know then was that the story wasn't over. Maria had one last desperate move left, and it would change everything. Guilt has a strange way of changing people. For some, it brings confession. For others, it brings destruction. In Maria's case, it brought desperation. For the next few days, she moved around the house like a ghost. The air between us felt heavier than ever. David didn't notice much. He was busy with work, but even he sensed something wasn't right. "Maria, are you okay?" he asked one evening at dinner. She smiled faintly. Just tired, I said nothing. I didn't need to. The silence between us spoke volumes. I thought the worst was behind us, that she'd learned her lesson. But guilt mixed with greed is a dangerous combination, and I should have known Maria wasn't done yet. It happened 3 nights later. The house was quiet, the kind of silence that hums before a storm. I was half asleep when I heard a faint noise, the creak of the back door, slow and careful. My heart froze. I slipped out of bed, my old bones protesting as I reached for my cane. I moved quietly down the hallway, every step measured. Through the dim light, I saw her, Maria, fully dressed, tiptoeing out of the house with a flashlight in her hand. I watched from the window as she hurried down the driveway and disappeared into the street. I didn't follow her this time. I didn't have to. I already knew where she was going, Samuel's workshop. She'd realized the car wasn't there anymore. And now, in her panic, she was going to find it, or destroy the evidence. I took a deep breath, then picked up the phone. "Mr. Haynes," I said quietly when he answered. "It's time." He didn't ask questions. He just said, "Understood." I hung up and waited. An hour passed before the sound of an engine broke the night. Headlights swept across the window as a car pulled into the driveway. I peeked out and saw a black van, unmarked, official. 2 men stepped out, speaking quietly to one another. Then they waited by the porch. When Maria returned, she looked wild, her hair disheveled, her hands trembling. She froze when she saw the men. "Mrs. Carter?" one of them said, flashing a badge. "We'd like to ask you a few questions regarding a vehicle ownership dispute." Her face went white. "What? I don't understand." They stepped closer. "The collector you met last week filed a report after receiving notice from the owner's lawyer about potential fraudulent activity. We just need you to clarify your involvement." I stepped out of the shadows. "Good evening, officers." Maria turned sharply, eyes wide with shock. You called them?" I shook my head. "No, dear. The law did its job. I simply protected what was mine." She looked like she might faint. "You set me up." I met her gaze steadily. "No, Maria. You set yourself up when you let greed blind you." David appeared at the door, groggy and confused. "What's going on?" Maria burst into tears. "Your mother's trying to ruin me." I looked at him quietly. "She tried to sell your father's car behind my back. The police are here because her buyer filed a complaint after realizing the deal was illegal." He looked at her, disbelief slowly dawning in his eyes. "Maria, is that true?" She stammered. I was going to tell you." "Tell me what?" He snapped, his voice sharp for the first time. "That you tried to steal from my mother?" The officers stepped back slightly, sensing this was a family storm about to break open. Maria sank to her knees, sobbing. "I just wanted to help us. The car was worth so much. We could have paid off the loan." David's voice cracked with anger. "At the cost of my mother's trust? Her memories?" I stood quietly, watching them. The scene was painful, but necessary. After the officers left, confirming they'd follow up in the morning, David turned to me, his face pale. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't know." I touched his arm gently. "It's not your fault, dear. Some lessons people must learn on their own." He nodded. Tears in his eyes, then turned toward Maria, who sat silently on the couch, staring at the floor. "I can't believe you'd do this," he whispered. She didn't answer. That night, I sat in my room again, staring at the old photograph of my husband on the wall. "You always said patience wins more than anger," I murmured. "You were right again." But as I looked out at the moonlight washing over the garden, I felt something unexpected. Pity. Maria had destroyed her own peace, and there was no joy in that. Revenge didn't taste sweet. It tasted empty. The next morning, she packed a small bag. She didn't look at me as she passed by my room. "I'll stay at my sister's for a while," she said quietly. I just nodded. When the door closed behind her, the house finally felt still again. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end, because secrets have a way of resurfacing. And Maria wasn't the type to disappear quietly. A week later, I received a letter. No return address. Inside was a single line written in shaky handwriting. You took everything from me. But you'll see. I'm not done yet. I stared at it for a long time, then folded it neatly and placed it in my drawer beside my husband's photo. Let her come, I whispered. This time I'll be ready. It had been almost a month since Maria left. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. David tried to stay strong, pretending everything was fine, but I could see the exhaustion in his eyes. He still loved her. Even after everything, he couldn't hate her. Every few days, he'd ask, "Do you think she'll come back, Mom?" I'd just smile softly and say, "If she's meant to, she will." But deep inside, I knew she wasn't coming back as the same person. One crisp morning, as I was watering the roses, a black car pulled into the driveway. It wasn't one I recognized. A man in a suit stepped out holding a briefcase. "Mrs. Carter?" "Yes," I said, tightening my shawl. "I'm Mr. Harrison from Wilkins & Carr Estate Services. We're handling some matters related to the late Mr. Carter's assets." My heart skipped a beat. My husband's estate? But that was settled years ago. He smiled politely. "I'm afraid not entirely. We recently discovered an unregistered trust tied to a certain property, or more specifically, a vehicle." I froze. "The car?" He nodded. "Yes, ma'am." "The car." David came outside, curious. "Is something wrong?" Mr. Harrison opened his briefcase and handed me a sealed envelope. "Your husband left specific instructions that this letter was to be opened only after the car was appraised or sold, whichever came first." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My hands trembled as I broke the seal. Inside, written in my late husband's neat handwriting, were the words that would change everything. "My dearest Mary, if you're reading this, it means someone has finally seen the car for more than just its metal and wheels. I kept it not for its worth, but for what it represents. Inside the trunk, hidden beneath the lining, is something you once told me the world didn't need to see. Your paintings. The ones you made before we were married. I couldn't let your gift fade away, so I kept them safe, waiting for the right time for you to see how valuable you truly were. If someone ever tries to take that car from you, remember, it carries your legacy, not just my memory." "Always yours, Robert." The letter slipped from my fingers. My knees went weak. David caught me before I fell. "Mom, what is it?" Tears blurred my vision. "Your father?" He hid my art. "My paintings." He blinked. "Your art? I thought you stopped painting when I was a child." I nodded, voice trembling. "I did. I thought no one cared. He told me he sold them years ago. But he didn't. He kept them hidden in that car. That's why it was so special." David's expression changed, from confusion to realization to deep, aching regret. "Maria, yes," I whispered. "She almost sold not just a car, but the last memory of your father and the pieces of my soul I thought I'd lost." He sat beside me on the porch, silent, processing everything. "Mom," he finally said, "we have to check the trunk." Together, we walked to the garage. Samuel had kept the car spotless. The deep maroon paint gleamed under the morning light. David opened the trunk carefully. At first, we saw nothing, just the old lining, slightly faded with age. But when he lifted it gently, a small wooden compartment revealed itself. Inside were several rolled canvases wrapped in cloth, untouched for decades. When I unrolled the first one, my breath caught. It was a portrait of my husband. Young, smiling, holding our newborn son in his arms, each painting was a story. Each brushstroke was a memory I thought time had stolen. David stood beside me, speechless. "These are beautiful, Mom. They're priceless." I smiled through tears. "No, son. They're mine. That's all that matters." But the peace of that moment didn't last long. That night, the phone rang. I answered, expecting it to be Samuel or the lawyer. Instead, a cold, familiar voice echoed on the other end. "Did you find it?" It was Maria. My chest tightened. "Maria, what do you want?" She laughed softly, a sound that sent chills down my spine. "You think you've won, don't you? That letter changed everything. I know what's in that car now," I said quietly. "You should stop this before you lose more than just your dignity." "Oh, don't worry," she said. "I'm not here to steal your art, Mary. I'm going to show it. The world deserves to know what you've been hiding." The line went dead. For a moment, I stood frozen, the phone trembling in my hand. Then I realized what she meant. She had pictures. The day she'd tried to sell the car, she must have taken photos of the trunk. And now she planned to use my art to ruin me. David found me sitting on the couch, pale and silent. "What happened?" I told him everything. He clenched his fists. "She's gone too far." I shook my head. "No, she's already lost. Let her do what she wants. The truth has a way of exposing itself." 2 days later, the truth did exactly that. Maria uploaded the photos online, claiming they were part of a secret art hoard, accusing me of being selfish for hiding them for decades. But what she didn't know was that the moment the car was appraised, the lawyer had filed ownership and copyright claims under my name. Within hours, her post was taken down, and the gallery she'd sent the images to. They reached out to me instead. "Mrs. Carter," the curator said, "your late husband preserved a national treasure. We'd be honored to exhibit your work." When the exhibition opened, I stood quietly in front of one of my old paintings, David beside me. Crowds filled the room, whispering, admiring. Maria didn't come, though I saw her name once in the crowd list. But I think she knew her part in this story was over. For the first time in years, I felt at peace. My husband's love had protected me even after his death. My art, my forgotten dream, was finally alive again. And Maria, she became a shadow of a lesson I'd never forget. As I looked at my paintings on the wall, I whispered to myself, "You tried to sell my car, Maria, but you ended up selling my silence and awakening my voice." They say time heals all wounds, but what I've learned is that time doesn't heal. Truth does. Months passed after the art exhibition. My paintings, once buried in dust and silence, now hung in galleries and homes across the city. People called them timeless, but they didn't know the truth behind each brushstroke. Every one of them was painted during a chapter of my life when I felt unseen. Each color carried the emotions I never spoke. Each line was a memory of a love that refused to fade. Every morning, I'd sit by the window with my tea and think about how far things had come. David visited often, smiling like the little boy he once was. The guilt he carried for Maria's actions had softened over time. He'd say, "Mom, Dad would be proud of you." I'd smile and answer, "He already is." And Maria? She disappeared from our lives quietly. I never sought her out. I didn't need revenge anymore. I'd already won something far greater. Forgiveness. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without pain. One afternoon, I was in the garden when a car stopped by the gate. The engine idled for a moment before a familiar voice called out, hesitant, trembling. "Mary?" It was Maria. Her once bright face was now tired, softer. Life had humbled her in ways I could see but didn't ask about. "I didn't come to ask for forgiveness," she said quietly. "I just wanted to say, you were right." I looked at her gently. "About what?" She took a shaky breath. "About greed. About family. I lost everything chasing what I thought I deserved. And when I saw your paintings, I realized I never created anything beautiful in my own life. I only tried to take what wasn't mine." Tears filled her eyes. "I'm sorry." The words hung in the air between us. Fragile, genuine. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I looked up at the old oak tree beside the garden, the one Robert had planted the year David was born. "Do you know what your problem was, Maria?" I finally said softly. "You thought the car was just a possession. You never understood that some things are anchors, reminders of who we were, of what we lost, and of what we still stand for." She lowered her head. "I see that now," I nodded. "Then maybe you'll be fine. It's not too late to start over. To create, not take." Her lips trembled into a faint, grateful smile. "Thank you." As she turned to leave, I called out, "Maria." She paused. "You once tried to sell my car. But in doing so, you reminded me what I was worth. For that, I forgive you." For the first time she smiled, truly smiled, and drove away. That night I sat in the garage again. The car still gleamed like the day my husband bought it. I ran my hand along the polished hood, whispering, "You protected me, old friend." When I opened the trunk one last time, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A small envelope tucked under the lining. My husband's handwriting again, "For when the story ends," it said. Inside was a single photo. Me, holding one of my paintings, my husband standing beside me, both of us laughing. On the back, he'd written, "If you're reading this, Mary, it means you found your way back to yourself. Don't ever stop creating. The world needs your light." I pressed the photo to my chest and cried, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming feeling of coming home to myself. For years, I'd let life silence my voice. Maria's betrayal didn't destroy me, it awakened me. It showed me that no matter how old we become, we are still capable of rebirth. Now, I tell my story to others, not as a tale of revenge, but as a reminder. Never let anyone convince you that your memories, your passions, or your worth can be sold. Because sometimes, what people try to take from you is the very thing that will save you. And if you ever find yourself standing alone, betrayed, or broken, remember this. You are not powerless. You are waiting for your moment. Mine came wrapped in betrayal, hidden in the trunk of an old car. Yours might come in a different form, but it will come, so hold on. Believe, and when your moment arrives, don't be afraid to start over, because every ending, even the painful ones, carries a seed of a new beginning. And that, my dear, is the final lesson my life has taught me.